Welcome everyone to part 7 of my complete Blender beginner tutorial series. So in the last part we went over basic lighting and adding in an HDRI, and we also added in this background, this sky background plane right here to cover up the HDRI. So in this part we're going to be going over basic materials. I'm going to introduce you to shader nodes, and we're going to be adding basic materials to all of the objects in the scene. So to do this, I'm going to go over to the shading tab right here. And you can see that when we go into the shading tab, it moves us into the material preview. So if you press Z and move your mouse down, it goes into the material preview. And the material preview basically uses the Eevee render engine, and it just shows a preview of your materials so that you don't have to go into rendered mode. So if you want to, you can go to the material preview. I'm just actually going to go into rendered mode. So I'm going to press Z and move my mouse up to go into the rendered mode. So you can see that down here, it's added in the shader nodes, and there is this emission here and the material output, and that's because I have this background selected right here. Now in the previous part, if I click right down here, we added in the sky material right here, but there's actually two different places to work with the materials. So right here on the side panel, this is a more simple way to work with materials, but right here, down here, this is a more complex way to work with the materials. So it's actually using nodes, and nodes are these little boxes right here, and then you're plugging the different boxes into each other, and you can sort of think of it as like coding the material. So you have these little boxes here, and you sort of program the material. So it's really cool. After this tutorial series, if you really enjoy using the shader nodes, then I do have some tutorials on how to make procedural materials, which is how to make materials using only the nodes that are built into Blender. So they're procedural because they're built into Blender, instead of using things like texture maps where you download from a texture website and then add it into your material. So in this part, we're not going to be going over adding textures. I'm just going to be adding some basic materials to all of these different objects. So the sky material, we just add that in and it has an emission. Let's click on the ground here, the ground plane, and you can see now it says new. Click on new, and I like to name all my materials just because it keeps things more organized. So I'm going to click on this material. I'm going to call it grass because it's the grass for the ground. Now you can see that on default it adds this principled BSDF node, and you can click and drag to move this around, and then it adds the material output. Now you can see that there is this wire here, so the principled BSDF is wired up to the material output. And you can actually click and drag and unplug the wire, and then if you let go, you can see that it's going to turn to completely black, and that's because the material output doesn't have any data for it to use, so it just turns to black. So I want to plug this principled BSDF back into the surface. Now there are different types of nodes for different materials that you're creating, but for most materials that you're going to be using, this principled BSDF is going to be everything that you need because it has all these different settings here, so you can make many different materials with this principled BSDF. You just change these values and it'll change the look of the material. So this may look a bit overwhelming with the amount of settings that are on here, but most of these you're actually just going to leave as the defaults. So we'll go through each material and I'll just show you what we're going to change, but most of these settings are going to be left as the default. So the first one here is the base color. Now because this is green grass on the ground, I'm going to click on this color right here, and then I'm going to change it to a green color. Now the green color, it's way too bright right now. That's not really realistic for grass. It's kind of like a neon green. So I'm going to turn this down and that'll make it darker. And then this is very flat, and so it's pretty reflective. So you can see that down here, there is a roughness value. And you can actually turn this down if you want to be really shiny. And you can see that now it almost looks like a green mirror. It's like reflecting everything, but I don't want it to be very reflective. So I'm going to turn the roughness up, and that's going to make it less reflective. So now you can see it's not very shiny at all. And maybe I'll just turn this green down a little bit. Okay, so for now, that's going to be our green material. And I'm going to also select the background hills and then click on this, and you can see that here are the different materials that we've added. I'm just going to click on the grass material. Okay, let's go into the next one, which is going to be the road here, or the concrete. I'm going to click on new, and I'm going to call this concrete. And I spelled that wrong, concrete. Okay, now later on in the tutorial series, we are going to be downloading a concrete material. It's a free concrete texture, and we're going to be plugging in the texture so that it's actually in the material. But for now, I'm just going to take the base color and turn it down and make it just like a gray color, and maybe just turn it slightly blue. That might look kind of cool. And then the roughness, just turn that up because concrete isn't super reflective. and then maybe turn this a little bit more down. Okay, there is my concrete material. Let's click over on the house now, and I'm going to click on new, and I can just call this material house. And make sure to always be saving your project by pressing Ctrl S to save your project every now and then. Now the base color for this house, you can change it to whatever you want, whatever house color you want. If you want a nice blue house or whatever, I'm just going to make it kind of a tan, kind of like a light brown, kind of a cream colored house. And of course you can always go back later and change the material if it doesn't look exactly how you want. So just something like that for now. All right, and then click on the fence. I'll go new, and I'm going to call this wood. And then I'm going to make this color a dark brown color for the wood. And that's a little bit too dark, so I'll make that a little bit brighter. Okay, you can zoom in here. Now, I think I forgot to mention this earlier, but I actually have Blender only rendering what's in the camera. And to do that, you go into the camera view, and then you press Ctrl B, and then you just select the entire camera. So just press Ctrl B, go over the camera, and then let go. And that way it's not going to render everything around here because I don't really need to see this. It doesn't need to render that. I just want to see what the camera's seeing. And that way the render will be faster because it doesn't have as much space to render. Now, if you want to zoom and look at a specific part, you can actually press Ctrl B and just box select an area, and it's only going to render what's in that area. And that way it'll speed up render times because you don't have to render all this extra area that you're not looking at the moment. And then when you want to go back to rendering what's in the camera view, you can press Ctrl B and then select this, and it's going to render what's in the camera view. Now, if I zoom out of the camera view, you can see it's going to be rendering everything that's in the view. If I press Ctrl B, you can see now if I move around, it's only rendering a little window. And then if you go into the camera view, it's still rendering what's in the camera. Now, if you want to get out of this, if you want to go back to seeing everything, what you do is you press N, and that's going to bring up this N panel. Let me just go back into the layout to show you actually. So you can see that if I press Ctrl B, it's just rendering one area, and I may not want this. I may want to render the whole thing. So you press N to open up the N panel. And then what you do is you go down to View, and then you can see that there is this render region. If you turn this off, now it's just going to be back to rendering everything. So Ctrl B if I just want to look at a specific area, then press N, click on render region, and now it's going to render everything again. And then if you want to disable that in the camera, what you need to do is go over to the output properties, and then you can see down here there is a render region. If you turn this off, now it's going to render what's all around in the camera. But I don't really ever use this because I like to only have it render what's in the camera view because that's what I want to see. So I just press Ctrl B, click and drag, and now it's only going to render what's in the camera view. All right, so now I'm going to go back to the shading tab and press Ctrl S to save your image. And I'm just going to go and turn off the render region, press 0 to go back into the camera view, and we'll continue with the materials. So in the camera now, if I press Ctrl B and click and drag and zoom in, you can see that now I can see the fence a lot better. So what I want to do is I actually want to make a material for the nail, but I want the material for the nail to be different than the wood material, but they're both in the same object. Because if I go back into layout here and then press 0 on the number pad to zoom into it, and then if I tab into edit mode, you can see that it is the same object. So what I can do is I can actually tell specific parts of the mesh to be a different material. So I'm going to go back to the shading tab, and I can tab back into object mode. So right over here on the materials panel right here, you can see that there is the wood material and then the wood materials down here. So what I want to do is actually add another material into this object. So the material slot, this is the material slot. I can click on plus, and that's going to add a second material into this object's material slot. Then I can click on new, and I'm going to call this material nail. Now, you can't see the nail material anywhere because we haven't assigned it to an area of the object. So I'm going to press Z, move my mouse over to go back into solid view, and then I'm going to tab into edit mode. And I think this would actually be a good time to use the material preview. So I'll press Z and move my mouse over and then let go. Just move your mouse down and go into the material preview. Now I can zoom in, and right now everything has the wood material, but I want the nail to have the nail material. So I will tab into edit mode, press A to deselect everything, and then hover your mouse over the nail. Then you can press L, and what that'll do is it'll select the linked vertices. So all the vertices that are linked to the one that your mouse was over, when you press L, it's going to select all of them. And then you can see on the slots right here, make sure you have the nail selected. Then you can click on assign, and you're telling it to assign that material to those faces. And there you go. You can see that now it has that nail material and it's white. And then because this is an array, it's just cloning or duplicating whatever is right here. So it's going to do it for the entire fence. So now what we can do is go into rendered mode and just zoom in here so I can see that nail. And I'm going to make the nail material. So of course you could change the base color to a gray color to make it look more like a nail, but a nail is actually a metal material. So what you can do is actually tell Blender that this material is going to be metal. So what you do is this metallic value here, you turn this all the way up to 1, and now it's really shiny and it looks like metal. So now the base color, you can change this to whatever you want. I'm going to make it a little bit brighter, but leave it kind of a gray color. And then the roughness here, this is going to tell it how rough the metal is going to be. So if you make it really shiny, it's almost going to be like a mirror because it's so shiny. But then if you turn the roughness up, the metal is going to be very rough. So just turn it to a value that you like. I'm just going to make it somewhere around here, maybe somewhere around 0.45, somewhere around there. And you can see that now the nail is very shiny. Press Ctrl S again to save your project, and we need to do that for all the different fence pieces because this was one object, so we're going to have to do it for the other pieces. So it's actually going to be pretty easy to do because again, these are clones of the first one. They're duplicates of the first ones. So we can just set the material for one piece of the fence, and then that'll be duplicated over to the other pieces of the fence. So I think this would be a good place to use, again, the material preview. So I'll press Z, move my mouse over, and go to the material preview so that we can see this a little bit better. Okay, let's navigate right down here to this one right here. I'll select this. And instead of clicking on new, I want to add that material. So there are a few ways to do this. One way is you can click right here and then click on the wood material. Another way is right here. You can click on this, click on the wood material. You can also select the fence and then right here or right here, these little material slots, you can drag them. If I just drag this, you can see that I can drag this and drop it onto the fence. And I actually dragged on the nail material. So what I need to do is if I click on this and change it to the wood, it's going to make the nail the wood material. So I actually have to go up here, click on the wood and select it. And then I can drag this over and drop it on, and it's going to make that fence the same material. So just select this object and then I will tab into edit mode, and I need to make the nail be that material, the nail material. So I'm going to hold down the control key and click with my middle mouse wheel to zoom in, and then press A to deselect everything and hover your mouse over the nail and press L, and that'll select all the linked vertices. So everything that's linked to that, it'll select it. And then once again, we need to add the nail material into that object's material slots. So I'll click on the plus here. And then instead of clicking on new, I want to click on the drop down and add in the nail material because it's the same nail material. So I'll do that. And then I can just click on assign with this selected and this selected. Click on assign, and now it has the nail material. Okay, so let's do that for the others. So I'm going to click with my middle mouse wheel, go over here. And if you wanted to, you could go back to the layout so that you have a bit more space. That would be a little bit easier. So I'm going to do that. So again, Z, move your mouse down to go into the material preview and select this. We'll tab into edit mode, A to deselect everything. Just hover your mouse over the nail and then press L, and that'll select all the linked vertices. And then you can click down here on the materials panel. We need to add the wood material to this, so click on wood, and because that is the only material, it's automatically going to add the wood material to all of the part of the mesh. And then we already have the nail selected, so I'm going to click on the plus right here, click on the drop down, click on the nail material, and then click on assign, and now it has the nail material. So let's just do that for the last one. So navigate over here, select this, we'll tab into edit mode. I'm going to press A to select everything and then period on the number pad to zoom over to it. Let's click on the drop down here and add the wood material, and then A to deselect everything, hover your mouse over the nail and press L, and then click on the plus right here, and then on the drop down, click on the nail material, and then we need to tell it to assign it to that. So just click on assign, and there we go. So now if I zoom out, you can see that the entire fence is wood. Now there's actually one little point right here. If I go over here, click on this piece, and then press period on the number pad to zoom into it. You can see this was the last piece that we duplicated, so we need to do this for this one too. So one more time, click on the drop down, click on the wood material, tab into edit mode, and then L to select the linked vertices. Click on the plus here, and then click on the drop down and select the nail, and then click on assign. So there we go. Now if I jump back into the camera view, the fence has the proper materials. All right, let's keep adding these materials. So I'm going to go back to the shading tab, and we'll keep on adding these materials. So I'm going to click on the next one, which is going to be the leaves or the bushy parts of the tree. So let's just click on that and click on new. I'm just going to call it tree, and then let's make that a nice green color, maybe a little bit darker. We can also go into rendered mode and see how that's looking in the rendered mode. And I do need to bring this down and then press Control B, drag over and let go. And then we can see that a little bit better. Okay, maybe turn the roughness up just a little bit and then make that a bit darker. Now again, I want to drop this color onto all the other ones. So I'll press Z, move my mouse over to go into material preview, and then I'll select this. Then I can just select this, drag it and drop it. And then I can just go along here and drag and drop the tree material onto all of the parts of the tree. There we go. Just do all those pieces of the tree. There we go. Now I'm going to select the tree trunk, click on new, and I'm just going to call it maybe like bark, or the bark of the tree. And for this, I'm just going to make this a brown color. So maybe just a brown color, a bit lighter colored than the fence. Let's just go into rendered mode, see how that's looking. Okay, maybe a little bit brighter. Okay, something like that. And then I can also just select this, click down here, and then click on bark, select this part of the tree, click on here, and click on bark. Okay, let's see how that's looking. Pretty nice. All right, let's select the roof now. I'm going to click on new and call this roof. And then this one is just going to be a gray color for now. We are going to be adding a material later in this tutorial series, but for now I'm just going to make it a dark gray color, and then the roughness will turn that up quite a bit. All right, let's do the door. So I'm going to select the door, click on new, call this one door, and make this one a light brown. Okay, about there. And then I'm going to zoom in here. Let me just go into the material preview. Sometimes that looks nicer. I'm going to select the frame, click on new. I'm going to call this frame. And this one, I want to be a bit darker of a brown, a bit darker than the door. So something like that. Okay, and then I want to add the frame material onto the other parts of the frame. So for the windows, drag and drop the material on there, and that one as well. Let's go over here, drop this one there, and there as well. And then let's select the foundation of the house, and I'm going to actually add that concrete material. Now, if you don't see the material, you can actually start typing it in. So you can see there's a little search here. So you can type in concrete and then add in the concrete material. You can also, of course, select this and then drag and drop it on. And then let's select the mailbox stand, and this one, I want to actually make it the fence material, so I can just type in wood and then add that, and it'll be the same material. All right, let's select the mailbox, click on new. I'm going to call this a mailbox. And this one, I want to make the base color right here. Let me just make this a little bit smaller. I want to make the base color a blue color. And then I'm going to turn the metallic all the way up, so it'll be a shiny metal material. And then the roughness, turn that down a little bit to make it a little bit more shiny. Okay, let's go into rendered mode, see how that's looking. That's really cool, and it's kind of reflecting the stuff around it. So that looks really good. Let's select the little flag here, click on new. I'm just going to call this mailbox flag, and then just make this kind of a gray color. That looks fine, just like that. Okay, and then I want to select this handle here, click on new. I'm going to call it handle, and this one I want to make the base color kind of a gray color, and this one again I want it to be a metal material. So the metallic value, I'm going to turn that all the way up to 1, and then the roughness you could turn it down a little bit so it's a little bit more shiny, and maybe turn the color down a little bit. Now that handle material, I also want it to be right over here on the door handle. So I'll select the door handle, click on this, start typing in handle, and then add the handle material to that. Okay, let's go ahead and do the windows now. So I'm going to select the windows, click on new, and I can call it windows, or I can just call it glass. And I'm not actually going to be using the principled BSDF node to make the glass. I actually want to add a glass shader. So this, I'm going to click on the principled BSDF and click on X to delete it. And then it turns black because it doesn't have any surface data. So just how like in the 3D view, you press Shift A to add an object, in the shader editor, you can also press Shift A or click on the add here to add nodes. So when you press Shift A, you can see that this thing comes up and there's all these different nodes that you can add. So there's a bunch of different nodes. I'm just going to click on the search. I just always use the search, and I'm going to click on the search and I'm going to type in glass. And you can see that in Blender, there's already a glass BSDF, so a glass shader built into Blender. So if I just click on this, add it in, and then this green here, I need to plug this up to the surface. And now if I press Z and move my mouse up, it's going to go into rendered view, and there's the glass. And then the roughness here, make sure this is turned to 0 because we want the glass to be perfectly shiny, because if you turn it up, it's going to kind of be like a frosted glass. So turn it all the way down. And then this here, you could make it a colored glass, but I'm just going to make it all the way up to pure white. Now you can see that it is reflecting, but it looks really dark, and that doesn't really quite look like glass. It's like really dark. It is having some shininess though and some reflection. Why this is so dark inside there is because there's not very much light getting into the house, because the only place that light can get through is through this glass right here. So there's not very much light shining into the house. So I actually want to add a light in the house. So I'll go back to the layout, and then I'm going to click with my middle mouse wheel and shift click with my middle mouse wheel and then zoom in and go inside the house. And then I'm going to place my 3D cursor just on the ground here, and I'll press Shift A, and I'm going to add a light, point light, and then press G and move it up a little bit and kind of just put it inside the center of the house, just like that. So if I press 0 now to go back into the camera view and press Z and move my mouse up to go into rendered mode, you can see if I just zoom in here, now you can actually kind of see like the walls inside the house. If I turn this way up, it's going to be too bright. I think I'll maybe just turn this up to like a 5, maybe a 6, just so there's a little bit of light in there. But then you can see that the glass is also reflecting what's out here. So it's reflecting the fence and the grass and all that. Okay, that looks really good. So I'll go back to the shading tab, and that's going to be the glass. So now let's go ahead and do the flag. So I will select the flagpole. Click on new, I can just call it flagpole or pole or whatever you want to call it. And then I'm just going to make it a dark color, pretty dark, about like that. Then let's select the flag, and the flag, I think I actually want the flag to be a little bit bigger because it's a little bit small. So let's go back to the layout here. Z, move my mouse over to go into solid view, and I'll press period on the number pad to jump over to the flag. Then I can press S to scale and just scale the whole thing up. Just make it a little bit bigger, and then press G to grab and just stick it right in there, right in the flagpole how it was before. Just like that. Okay, let's go back to the shading tab, select the flag, I'm going to click on new, and I'll just call this flag. Now right now I'll just leave it as kind of a white color, basically just the basic principled BSDF. I just want to leave it as a white flag, but later in the tutorial series we will be adding a texture onto the flag. Okay, this is looking really good. Let's do the clouds now. So if you select this, you can see it's actually going to select all of it. You can see if you select one of them, it's going to select everything. So then you can click on new, call this clouds, and that's because the cloud object isn't a regular mesh, it is the meta ball. So just call this clouds. I'm just going to make it a bright white, and then I'll turn the roughness up a bit so it's not super reflective. And that'll do it for the clouds. So we're almost done here. I do want to select the entire grass material and make it a little bit darker because it is like really bright right now. So I'll just make it a little bit darker. All right, and the last thing that we need to add is the chimney. So let me go back into layout here so we can see this a little bit better. Let's navigate over here to the chimney, and I want to add a texture to the mortar, but you can see that it's really hard to see. You can select it right there if you can see it, but it's a little bit hard to select. So I'm going to actually select one of these bricks, press H to hide it, and then I can select this, click on new, and I can just call this one mortar. Okay, so then this, I'm just going to make kind of a dark, kind of a brown color. If I press Z, move my mouse up, we can go into rendered view or just go into the material preview. Okay, that looks pretty good. And now I'm going to press Alt H, and then that brick will come back. Okay, let's select one of the brick materials, click on new, and I'm going to call it brick. Okay, and then this brick color, I'm going to make it kind of a dark red color, something like that. That looks pretty cool. A little bit more saturated. And then bricks aren't shiny, so the roughness, I'm going to turn that way up. Now, it would be pretty annoying to add the brick material manually to all of these bricks, but there's actually a way to very quickly add the brick material to all the bricks. So what we do is we just select all the bricks, So an easy way to do this is to just select some of these objects around them and hide them. So I will select the roof, press H to hide it, select the house, press H to hide it. And then let me just bring my view up like this so that nothing else is in the way. I'll press Z to move over to wireframe, and then I can press B and box select this entire thing. So all the bricks are selected. I can go back into solid view, and then I want to deselect the mortar. So I'm going to press B for the box select and then click with my middle mouse wheel and drag over and let go. And that'll deselect the mortar right in there. So now I have just the brick selected. Then what I want to do is press Z, move my mouse down to go into the material preview. And then I'm going to lastly select this brick material. So hold down the shift key and select this one last. And that way these are going to be having an orange outline and this is going to be having a yellow outline. So now I want to make all of the other bricks have that same material. So because this is selected last, I can press Control L. And Control L is going to bring up the linked menu, and I want to link the material. So click on materials, and now because this is the last one that's selected, all the materials are going to be linked to whatever this was. So now they all have that material. So then I can just press Alt H to unhide everything, go into camera view, and I can just go into rendered mode. So now we have all the materials on our objects. Now there's one more thing that I want to do to finish up this part. What I want to do is have each brick have a slightly varied color. So that way it'll just look a little bit cool, make it a bit more interesting, and each brick will be maybe a little bit darker or a little bit lighter. And I'll show you a way to do this without just selecting each brick and changing the material and then changing the color. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the shading tab, and we're actually going to be using these nodes to make this. So make sure you have a brick selected, and I can just press Z and move my mouse down to go into the material preview. What I'm going to do is press Shift A, and I'm going to click on the search to search for a node, and I'm going to search for the object info. So search for object info, click on the object info, and I'm going to put it behind the principled BSDF. So what we want to do is we want to take this random value here and we want to plug it into the base color. So basically what we're doing is this object info node, it has random data, and so we want to tell it to plug that into the base color, and that way it's telling it that each object that has that material is going to be a slightly different color. So this random here, we're going to plug it into the base color. And when we wire this up, what it's going to do is it's not going to use this color anymore. It's going to use the data that it has from this wire when we're plugging it up. So we'll plug it up, and you can see that now each object has a random color. If I just select a brick and then press Shift to duplicate it, you can see that as I duplicate them, they're randomly having different colors. So I'm just going to Control Z that, but you can see that because we plugged this in, it's now just black and white because this object info node doesn't have any other data other than black and white, and so it's just randomly generating black and white colors with the random value. So now what we need to do is we need to tell it what colors we want to use. So what we're going to need to do is put in a color ramp right in here and then just tell it what colors we want it to be. So I'll press Shift A again, or just go to the add menu, but I like to use the shortcut keys. So Shift A, and I'm going to search for a color ramp node. Here it is, color ramp. Click on it and then just place it down here. Now we actually want to wire it up through this so that the random goes into the factor of this color ramp and then it goes out of the color and into the base color. So you could just like click on this, put it into here, and then click on the color, put it into the base color, but there's actually a quicker way to do this. So I'm just going to click on the random, wire it back up to here, and then just click on this one and let go. What you can do is you can click on this and drag it up, and you can see that now that wire is going to turn a lighter color. You can let go and it's going to automatically wire it up. So now there's the random colors going into the base color, but there's the color ramp going through it. And so the color ramp is going to tell it what colors are going to be let through. So now I can change these colors. So if I zoom in here, you can see that the color ramp has two different values. It has a white value and a black value. And there's these two different tabs here. So if I click on the tab and pull it around, you can see that as I make the black bigger, more of the colors are going to be randomly generated as black because the black is bigger, whereas the white is a lot smaller. And the same thing works for the white. So I can grab these tabs and pull them around. Now down here, this is the color of the tab, so I can change this color. So I want it to be kind of a red color, kind of a brick color. And you can see that now, maybe make this a little bit darker. This one is going to be a nice red-orange color. And then the other one here, if I click on the black one, you can change this as well. So I'm going to click on this, and I don't want it to be fully black. I want it to be kind of a dark brownish reddish color, so something like this. And now you can see, if I look around here, you can see that it's randomly generating colors in between these. So that looks really good. And then I think that I want this to be a little bit more red, so I'll make that a little bit more red, a little bit brighter, because right now it's a bit too orangey. So both of these colors I think I'll make a little bit more red, so they look like bricks. Not too red though, I want them to be a little bit orange as well. Okay, so what we can actually do is we can actually add more colors in. What you do is you click on the plus here, and that's going to add a new tab. So if you want to just change it to a different color, you can. I'm just going to make another one and just make it kind of a color kind of in the middle here. You don't need to do this if you don't want to, but I'll add another one. And then again, this one can be pulled around to change how much is going to be that color. So there we go. Now we have our bricks and it's randomly generated, so they're different colors. So yeah, this object info is a really cool thing in Blender. It's a really cool feature to use. So I'll press period on the number pad again and we can check out how it's looking. All right, I'm going to save this again by pressing Control S. You can also go File and then Save. So that's going to wrap it up for this part. So in the next part, we're actually going to be downloading textures from some free texture websites. So I'll only be using free textures. So there will be links and you can download the same textures that I'm using. And then we're going to be placing those textures that we download onto our materials. So we'll download a concrete material, put it on there, and then we'll also download a roof material and put that texture onto the roof and so on. So thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful, and there will be a link right up on the screen. You can just click on the next part when it's released. Thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you in the next part.